Hi, everybody. Today we're going to discuss a case study and figure out what green flags or red flags are being shown. So it'll be someone that AI will create as a possible situation that's either a toxic relationship or not, and we're going to try to identify the red and green flags. So it's the first time I'm reading it. The client's name is Maya, 29, so this is not real. She has been dating Alex for 8 months. She feels deeply connected but increasingly anxious. What she reports. So Alex texts her constantly and gets upset if she doesn't respond quickly. He says things like, "You're the only person I need," and encourages her to spend less time with friends. When they argue, he apologizes but adds, "I only acted that way because you triggered me." He checks her social media and questions who she follows. He also plans thoughtful dates, talks about a future together, says he wants them to grow spiritually and heal together. Maya asks, "Is this intensity just passion and trauma bonding we are healing through, or is this toxic?" Um, so, um, so let's just based on what she's reported, without having to ask her in deep more questions. Well, maybe some we'll need to know, but um, so him texting her constantly, like we'd want to know, like, was there any past issues where, was the trust lost or anything, or is he coming in with this trust issue situation? And the fact that he gets upset if she doesn't respond quickly, is that because, like, if let's say if there was like a trust issue, like someone's trust was lost because someone cheated, and he needs reassurance and security. Of course, you want to do that on your own, but you want to also know that the other person who you've decided to stay with is also going to be reassuring you and stuff, as you go through this situation, because you're putting yourself in a situation where it's a lot of emotions when the trust is lost, to that extent, and needs to be rekindled. Um, but but they're not stating that, so I'm guessing that's not the situation. So of course that's not good if someone's just getting upset because you're not responding quickly. He says things like, "You're the only person I need," and encourages her. And the fact that it says it encourages her. He encourages her to spend less time with friends. That's always a red flag, because they're isolating you. It's not like, they're not trying to isolate you because they think like those people are really bad for you, but anytime that's even like not great. Like anytime the isolation comes in is not great, but like you might try to think like, "Oh, well, this time this friend was trying to tell me to stay away from this friend or this friend." This is different because this person is trying to encourage her to spend less time with friends, and it's not saying that those friends, like, there's any issues with those friends. um when they argue, he apologizes but adds, "I only acted that way because you triggered me." So like he's pretending like he's apologizing, but not actually. He's throwing it back on her, saying like, "It's because you did that and it caused me to do that." And when emotionally abusive relationships become physical, down the road, perhaps for some, it's like, "Oh, but you got me so angry. Why did you get me so angry?" And like, I did that, and then and the fact that he apologizes can be really confusing to this fake client, Maya. And so he checks her social media and questions who she follows. And so this is like on top of everything else he's doing. So the controlling aspect, the yeah, just like pure control, trying to kind of even undermine decisions she's making as an adult as well. um and yeah, so then and then he but then at the same time, it's saying like he plans thoughtful dates, talks about a future together, says he wants them to grow spiritually and heal together. So this part, I'm so glad it brought up this, because it's really important because so I had a friend long time ago, whatever I describe about the situation won't give away who it is, but the person that they were dating for like close to a decade, they were constantly confused. They were constantly like, oh, but they're so good to me, because the person was so like lovey-dovey, and like thoughtful in some ways and did all these things and was such a big romantic, but then would cheat on them a lot, or they would think they would cheat on them during the times when they wouldn't catch them. So like it was just constantly confusing that like, oh, there's this other side of the person. And sometimes they would get upset and angry, and also not want them to work in certain situation or certain places with certain people and stuff. So like they were very jealous, but they were the one who's like always cheating. But they would, but like I've seen that as well, where sometimes the person cheating, I guess they know what's the possibilities out there and stuff, so they end up becoming the jealous one sometimes, and seeing and trying to control someone's situation because or environment, because they know what they're capable of, and I think sometimes they think that other people are capable of it, and that's not all the time, but I've seen that in enough people that it's something to be mindful of, but not always the case, because there's many different types of people. So the fact that he's saying like, oh, he wants to grow spiritually together and heal together. So these like buzzwords and stuff are really important, because the information out there is out there and many people have access to it. So, oh, what red flags to look out for, what things to look out for on your first or second dates and stuff like that, like in videos that I talk about. And it does go in my mind, like in the back of my head, that like, okay, I have to be mindful that I'm not giving advice to people that are going to use psychology in a bad way. It's like a powerful tool. And yeah, but I have to know that like, I do know that there's more good in the world, and people genuinely do need this information and it would help them. But it does play in the back of my head that like, what am I like condoning or allowing? So that's why even with certain clients, it's like, when people will be like, oh, why don't you work for this big company? It's just like big company. I would be like, well, what they're going to use the information and my knowledge for is not going to be for good. Maybe like in this project, they might show that they're doing it to, to help people, and to help people's like mental health, but their company overall is about making people addicted to certain types of technology and stuff like that. And I have to be careful that like I don't work for companies that do that. So a bit sidetracked, but and so Maya asks, is this intensity just passion and trauma bonding we're healing through? And even that question, like, is this passion just, and it's been 8 months. So like the passion, the fact that I think that she might be confusing this with passion, which it might actually be a lot of anxiety. Like, of course, there's a lot of good in the relationship that she might not be bringing up, and then also she's bringing up like, oh, is this just trauma bonding we're healing through? I wouldn't necessarily say that like going through the like trauma bonding is like a good sign to begin with. So the fact that she's aware of it and she just thinks like, oh, this is just something we're healing through. So maybe they're both bringing their trauma together and trying to heal through it. That's possible. And she's okay with that. But you have to be wary of like trauma bonding, right? It's not a good connotation. It's trauma and bonding. So dumping your trauma on someone, or sharing your trauma on someone, it could feel so good. Like, and I've done it too without even knowing it years ago, where I thought like, oh, I'm sharing insight to know that if that person has gone through this, so that we know that like we've learned the same lessons in life. So I thought like that was a way to know that like, oh, if they've learned the lesson, of course, like I ask as well, but it was like a good indicator of like, oh, okay, they've been through it, they've gone through this stage of their life or something, and then later realizing that like, well, it's good for me to focus on the good things, the positive things, and we could talk about like the lessons we've learned, but that's not where I want to start a relationship. But that doesn't mean like, you know, you like that happens for everyone, and sometimes like, you know, you start there in a relationship and then it goes into something serious, and you grow together in a loving way, but it's not always great when you're dumping each other's trauma, because you don't know who's growing in what way and what lessons and stuff like that. So could be a little tough, or one person has gone through the lessons and it's exposing like the trauma, and like I said, like in a way to maybe see that like, have we learned the same lessons and stuff like that, and the other person might be really deep in it, so you don't know how what they're gonna do coming out of it, you know, and like they need to get that help, like you not being their therapist, you're their partner, or possible partner, and stuff like that. So making sure you're not there to just like to heal and fix them, or be like, oh, I know how to help you and you have all these other traits, but it's like sometimes like, well, you don't know how they're going to come out at the end, at the other side of that. So obviously like the situations could be very like specific, and for some people it's like, oh well, it worked out for us and it's so great because you know, we were both doing these healing techniques and this. It's of course possible, because some people like can maybe intuitively knew that like, hey, we are a good match, and we are, you know, we're growing through this and we're doing our own inner work and we help each other when needed, but like this is not gonna ruin the relationship. But I'm saying that like it's tread carefully, maybe talk to like a professional or get good resources online and stuff like that to make sure you're not just bonding over trauma, and that's making you be like, oh my god, we have so much in common, but the trauma is where the connection is. So yeah. And someone like people, there's people out there that are like specialized in understanding trauma bonds and stuff, and they could talk about that more in depth, I would say. Okay, so Maya, so she wants to know, is this just intensity or passion? And I think that she's confusing anxiety and excitement, which I've talked about in other videos. This idea that like, oh, well, she thinks like it's been 8 months. So she thinks like, oh my God, there's so much passion. And this intensity is just like this, like she's talking about all of this, knowing that it might be intensity, it seems. And then she's using the word passion. So that's like, that wouldn't make sense. So that's why I would say that she's confusing excitement with anxiety, and yeah, and so right now AI is saying like, how could you break this down? But you know, this is the first time I'm reading this, so I guess it's giving me the answer, even though I told it maybe it is. I don't know, but anyways, it's showing, yeah, it is, I think, because it's showing different red flags. But anyways, it is talking about green flags as well, because I think it knows that it didn't give me a full story. And it's saying, you know, if the person talks about long-term growth and stuff and how that could be healthy, and how, yeah, the apology is good if the behavior changes, accountability is clean, no blame is attached. Okay, so it's saying like what I said, how it's a red flag because he's using that like something like his anger and his triggers, he's using like, he's saying like, oh, you triggered me, and is blaming her for the situation, is not taking accountability at all. And it sounds like it's a repetitive thing. And so yeah, and so he's not putting like any action in place to change that behavior, which is really important. It's not giving me any more details. Let me ask any more details about Maya I should know. Don't give me answers. Okay, yeah, see, it says if you're using this as a teaching case, the power is in what isn't immediately visible, which I discussed that, like, it's important to know that we're not getting all the information here. Okay, so now it's giving me a little bit of a background. She grew up with a loving but emotionally inconsistent parent, which is really important. Learned to earn affection through achievement or emotional caretaking, feels most bonded when she's needed. So perhaps she's in this relationship because she wants to fix the person. So she doesn't mind the trauma bond. She might even has gone deep into understanding what trauma bond is, to the point where it's just like, oh, she understands them so well and where the root of the issues possibly are, or that it's just become normal for her, because she's just done work on trauma bonding, that she just maybe is casually using it, or it could be a buzzword that everyone's throwing around as well. But let's say that she knows a bit about trauma bonding and seems to be okay with it, because she's separating that from it being a toxic relationship. And so she's thinking that it's okay, which is something that she needs to be aware of, that she's learning so much about the intricacies of toxic relationship patterns, and things might start becoming a bit too normal for her. Okay, and has a pattern of intense 6 to 12 month relationships that end abruptly. Yeah, so so based on the information that we got earlier, that I said that she's confusing passion and anxiety. It seems to be true, because if her relationships are just ending and very abruptly, she's probably just used to that intensity, and she thinks that it's passion and that's how it should always be, or she learned to earn affection through achievement or emotional caretaking. So she thinks that these things are normal, and she maybe feels comfortable, but the good thing is to know that if you think that oh my God, I feel comfortable in no situation, you have to know that your body doesn't, the soul doesn't, your intuition doesn't, whatever you want to call any of that, it doesn't feel actually comfortable. You might be confusing the senses, but the senses are still there. And sometimes the senses don't sound as loud because of situations you're going through, or maybe you live a bit more of a wilder life at this stage of your life, especially if you're partying or this or that. But it's important to know that the senses are there. There's nothing wrong with you. Everyone has these senses, and it's about uncovering it. And since a lot of us were not taught, and we're actually more so taught indirectly almost sometimes to suppress them through different, through schooling, education, family, just different ways of being conditioned, that we were suppressed. This intuition was suppressed either by them lying to us and making sure we know that we are wrong and they are right. And as you take that on as you grow up, then you realize these senses that I thought was telling me that they did something wrong, and they showed me proof that I was wrong, or they really made sure I knew it, or they were in a position of authority and they made sure I knew it. You kind of start suppressing those feelings, or switching them and saying oh, those feelings that I felt weren't true. That wasn't my gut, or that wasn't something telling me something. That was just me making things up. And then you start switching the senses and giving it different definitions or names and stuff. It happens to everyone differently, but just an example. Okay. It talks about her nervous system baseline. Wow. Okay. Describes herself as high functioning as high functioning anxious, feels bored or disconnected in calmer relationships. Oh, there you go. So yeah, so she's oh wow, like wow, it really knows the stuff that I talk about without me even saying it. I just told them like behavioral scientist focused on like explaining spiritual concepts and stuff. Give me a case study, and like that was it, like 2 sentences. But anyway, so it's funny. So feels bored or disconnected in calmer relationships. Very, very, very important. Calmness, sometimes we confuse that with boredom, because we think that because we might be in a lot of more chaotic environments with friends that are a bit more like bring that chaos, and we allow it, right? Like take that responsibility, like we're allowing it, or we live in family situations where it's a bit more chaotic, and so we might have to do more work on regulating our systems and stuff like that, and making ourselves feel safe. And yeah, so for her, calmness is probably like she feels bored or disconnected in calmer relationships, because she's confusing calmness and boredom. And it's really important to, that's why they say like to sit with the with sit with yourselves. Oh, my doggy, I think he wants a snack. But it's important to sit with the calmness and the peace and the silence. That's what it is. Sit with the silence, so that and it's not like, oh, you have to sit there in silence all the time. Like you, especially if you're coming from more chaotic situations, you can start by doing guided meditations online, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, sitting there quietly. When you go out, maybe you don't drink one time, and see how it is. Do you still like it when you're out there not drinking alcohol? Because if you're gonna have fun, if you're gonna have fun, then you want to have fun. You don't need the alcohol to have fun and stuff. So just trying to bring more calmness in your life, not going out that extra day of the week. But I'm not saying it to like, oh, you should isolate yourself and this, but like for some, in a way, when they go to like meditation retreats and stuff, and that type of isolation, perhaps. But sometimes it's just about going to going, like, I know they say like going within, but it's about like feeling what it feels like to stay still, stay calm. You don't actually have to make yourself bored, but you do have to start switching the language between boredom and calmness. And so making sure you're not constantly using that word boredom. And so, but you're still doing things that bring you joy and happiness, but still in a way that's not being confused with high anxiety, excitement, air quotes, and you're saying that it's excitement, but it's actually anxiety. And so making sure that you're doing things that are a bit more stable and calming, but in a way that you still enjoy. And so to even like dial it down a little bit, then over time you end up realizing that like, oh, well, I'm when I now go out with these friends, I notice a big shift and a big difference. And that's going to happen when you are not hanging out with certain people, especially for a while. So you have to understand that you are going, my dog, my honey, you are going to understand that sometimes that happens because you've been at home and away from people, so it takes time to see people. But it's also good to learn that like, oh, is this bringing me my anxiety up, or is that just because haven't seen people in a while. So yeah, overall, yeah, I think it's just saying the same things now that we've brought up. So yeah, so I would conclude that it is a toxic relationship, and that it seems like the other details that it just gave just concludes that it is. And yeah. And yeah, if you guys want more of these, if you all want more of these case study videos, which I enjoyed, but I'm going to make sure and make it more clear that I don't want them to give me any answers even later on. So, or maybe at the end when we're done, to kind of just be like, yay, we figured out. But with the little information that we got, I think it gives a good understanding of a relationship, and a little bits of red flags, even with the little information that we got, little bit the red flags to watch out for. And yeah, so I hope this helps, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.